Okay, what I did here is I just marked off this section. The figuration is pretty much the same on this page, but I needed just to have a spot that I can start from this section into the next page. So that's why I just arbitrarily marked that spot. But here's the issue. Okay, so I have like 15 minutes to work on this page, and feel free to pause the video when I have the page displayed if you wanted to look over it. And I'll put a link in the description too, so you can see the score if you want to. But anyway, I have 15 minutes to work on this this page mainly, and I just don't know it at all. And so I want to show you how I would approach learning this. So the first step is to play it very simply, just at a slow tempo, but don't think that you're about to practice it, just almost like you've already learned it. So just imagine that, but so that obviously you haven't learned it, but just kind of play through it kind of for fun. And what we're gonna do, and I'll show you, is that we want to just get into touch with the main things that happen as we play these particular ideas. So let's go through it. Feel free to play different groupings again. Stop there. Okay, so clearly I didn't even know what clefs I was playing in, because it changes a lot, and I noticed I wasn't really thinking ahead at all. I was kind of taking each chord and trying as it comes, and then trying to group things in the left hand, but I wasn't quite succeeding very well. But I noticed that it seems like it's in general a longer phrase, and mostly kind of color. So those are kind of the main. There's a lot of sweeping movements. A lot of times the left hand doesn't have to feel so active because the position pretty much stays the same. So I know that it can be just feel a little bit more kind of on the keyboard, not tight or anything, but it's not like it's struggling. I'd imagine up to speed it wouldn't be like it's struggling to play everything, so that's good. I kind of have that concept. And the main thing with the melody of the right hand is that I need to train my ear to continue hearing through things and completing different gestures, so that it's not just octave, octave, and other perfect octaves, and then some broken octaves, because that just gets really obnoxious. And so what I want to do with that in mind, with those, so now I kind of have those major concepts to work on, and then we'll start actually working on that. And when people say, oh, like one of my favorite strategies is called skeletonizing, so I play only the important beats. So maybe I'll do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And people think, well, why are you doing that? It's not what's written. The movements are not the same. The mechanics. Yeah, maybe that's the case, but I'm not practicing for the mechanics. I'm practicing so that I can internalize what's going on with the pulse. And so you think about the movement to those important beats, and you think ahead to each downbeat. So that's what you're training. So when you skeletonize, you're not supposed to be focused on every minute movement of the forearm and the wrist, because that's not what you're working on at that particular time. you're skeletonizing to train the mind and to think ahead and to actually learn what the score visually looks like in your mind, and then and of course the layout. And so you use them where you can just do downbeats, and then maybe you can shadow the left hand. 1, 2, 3, 1. So it's not about the mechanics of it, it's about getting in your mind that the left hand is subordinate. The right hand can be a stronger visual point of reference. And I'm thinking to the next, I was thinking a measure ahead. And you can look at the keyboard. So that's kind of the idea. But then when you play it, by the time you want to play again, you'll have other things that you were listening for, thinking of. But it's just that it gives some foundation of you kind of know what to look for. So that's why I think that method is effective. Okay, so now the left hand is starting to go to C major, and the harmony changes again. But in this particular case, if I just play left hand randomly each time, it's just going to be like piece, and then another piece. But it's more, the accompaniment now is a little bit more important. And the right hand's just pretty much chromatic. So this right hand basically is going to from here to here. So you don't need to think so much in the moment, because in your mind it's just a projection to here. So that means let's try to create that kind of direction in the left hand to there. You can do left hand alone. Maybe do huckleberry pie, huckleberry pie, huckleberry pie, huckleberry pie. So you build in the connection. And of course you notice what's happening with the mechanics. The forearm isn't tightening up at the end. So you can keep that in mind, but don't practice focusing on that, because there's nothing to internalize it with. It's just you're thinking about what's happening there. So you again focus on the visually where it's going, the sound that you want. And most of the mechanics will adjust. You just can happen to keep certain things in mind that you realize help, like with the forearm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So now let's add the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I noticed that even though the right hand was going up, I can just focus on the left hand at this particular time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because it's I think that's what I want to bring out more. So then we have this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so for this time, with these double notes, just a small mechanical thing that you can tackle along the way. This a group of 3 and another group of 3 is difficult when the note in between overlaps. So you might want to practice accenting. Something like that. So you're not focused on the note in between, so it gives you something else to focus on. And then when you add it back in, it's better. So this is obviously it's just a it's a big stretch. One thing that might help, and I don't know if I can really display it while it's sitting, camera sitting there, but sometimes the very essential things are what's causing the problems. Fingering, for example. If you look at some of these spots, we start thinking about it, but think about 3-4 years ago. You probably think, well, what fingering am I going to use? And that's just the right thing. Sometimes playing, actually in a slow tempo, focusing on the notes and the individual intervals between the notes on the wood shows you that the fingering is maybe not so decisive. And it's kind of back and forth. Looking for patterns indicates fingering, but internalizing fingering also helps lead to forming patterns. For example, if I were to work on that, so this is a strange 2 bars. So it's basically an octave. I kind of like 2, 1, 2, 1, and then 4, 3. Okay, so I notice it's easier to think ahead with my right hand playing because it's only just one fingering. But the left hand changes. So like I said, the fingering, I noticed that the complexity of the fingering in the left hand indicates that the forming patterns and groupings in the left hand will be a little trickier. So I need to put a little bit more conscious thought into it now, so that regardless of what I voiced, at least I've kind of internalized that. So you can just practice left hand alone if you want. Try to envision that as you're playing the first measure. Maybe you can imagine that the crescendo, instead of starting the crescendo in the second measures, from the first measure, start it in the second measure, because that'll make this in your mind, you'll perceive it as a little bit more harmonically and melodically driven. So there's a little bit more care that you're going to take. So that'll open the sound here and kind of draw it together. So that's another mental trick. Or even rhythms. So that you don't take time in the first measure, but the second measure there's just the idea that it's going to be fuller, so that it gives you time to think through the whole spot before you get into it. So you play straight to the next measure, and then you broaden it as you start to execute the next measure. So that seemed to help. So what are we at? Almost, okay, we're almost 15, so I'm actually behind schedule. I'm only halfway there. Let's see. I guess at this point, we only have 30 seconds. We're gonna have to reduce the texture for the time being. So this is octaves, forget about the broken octave. Just play the octave, or even just play in below when you take out the broken chord, you realize that the figure is actually much closer on the keyboard than you realize. Instead of like hopping, it's just like an arpeggio that's on the keyboard. And I would take this and I would break it into smaller subphrases. You know, because clearly it's not just random. There are harmonic patterns and like melodic patterns, and then answers, interjections, and then we have that nice kind of 2-bar thing to set up the cadence. So reduce it and break it into phrases, and again familiarize yourself with the pulse by taking like the same method at the beginning, taking a little bit of the slower tempo and focusing on training your mind to think ahead. And chances are you'll realize you're moving too much because the downbeats are not so far away. You know, that's probably the biggest secrets of this part. Regardless of how jumpy and off the keys it seems, it shouldn't feel that way. And so you should use those strategies to overcome that. But I think that will that should fix this whole section here. I'm sorry that of course I'm filming vertically. I know that's kind of that's frowned upon, but when I set the phone here, it's easier to see kind of the hands with it vertical like that. But that's on my wish list, of course, is an actual like phone tripod. So I'll work on getting that. But anyway, I hope this has helped, and let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks so much.